Hello and welcome, and to those that watch my first video, welcome back to the channel. So today I want to talk about the Seiko SKX007. Now this is a very popular watch indeed. It's also probably the most reviewed watch on YouTube. People love to talk about the history, the heritage, the ISO dive certification, the value for money, the robustness of the watch, the substandard quality of the factory straps and bracelets, and all sorts of other topics too, none of which really get to the heart of what it's like to own one on a day-to-day basis. Anyhow, this is a watch review, so before we start I should do a wristwatch check. And in keeping with the dive watch theme, today I'm wearing my Christopher Ward C60 Trident Pro 600 5-day chronometer with the black dial and the black ceramic bezel. I love this piece. They didn't make that many of them and I was lucky to find one. It has the old logo at the 12 o'clock position. It's got the SH21 in-house movement and it screams quality and keeps impeccable time. I'd love to tell you all about it, but that's not what we're here for. So let's get on with the SKX review instead, eh? Okay, so this is my SKX007. It's the J model, which means it was made in Japan for the Japanese domestic market. The K model is made in Malaysia. Anyway, the Japanese version is more sought after because people think that the build quality and finish are superior. You can tell a J from a K because the J model, shown here on the left, has 21 jewels written on the dial at the 6 o'clock position, and the made in Japan and very small writing just to the left of the 6 o'clock marker. The K model on the right doesn't have either of these features. Anyway, having owned this watch for over a year now, I do feel qualified to talk about it and make a few observations. It's by no means perfect, but it still gets a lot of wrist time because I like it in spite of its shortcomings. So let's start with the basic measurements, shall we? Okay. So we have a diameter of 42 millimeters. We have a thickness of 13 mil. We have lug to lug of 45.5, and we have lug width of 22. This bracelet is not factory original because whilst I love the look of the Jubilee style bracelet, the Seiko factory version is made of bits of pressed sheet metal and leaves a lot to be desired in terms of quality. Some people really like it, but I'm not one of them. So I saved a bit of money and bought this watch on a rubber strap. Then I fitted this aftermarket Jubilee bracelet, which is not only affordable but also beautifully made. The links are solid, and so are the end links. It's made of 316L stainless steel. It has screw and link pins, and it has a nicely machined push button double lock clasp. Look at that, fantastic. I can definitely recommend this bracelet. So I'll leave a link to where I bought it in the description below for anyone that's interested. Okay, so I would be doing this watch an injustice if I didn't put it on the wrist so that you could all see what it looks like. And there we go. Absolutely gorgeous. It's also very comfortable and fits nicely, but then again I do have very large wrists. They're 7 3/4 inch. Now then, let's talk a little bit about the history of these watches. Seiko have been making tough, dependable dive watches since the mid-1960s. This diver was prized by many US soldiers in Vietnam, for instance, for its ruggedness, reliability and good timekeeping even in the most extreme conditions. It was during the 70s that Seiko first produced the now iconic tuna and turtle models. Thus, by the 90s, Seiko had built a reputation for building robust, reliable, affordable dive watches. In 1996, Seiko introduced the 7S26 movement, and with it a new range of dive watches with the SKX designation. The most popular of these has proved to be the SKX007, followed by the SKX009 with the distinctive red and blue Pepsi bezel. This watch certainly has much to recommend it. The dial and handset are not an homage to any other dive watch. It has a unique aesthetic and I like that very much. I love the dial and bezel. I love the cushion case with its brushed lug tops and high polished sides. I love the high polished case back with the embossed tsunami artwork. And I love the solid 120 click bezel. I also love the spectacular Seiko Lumibright Lume, which is great if you wake up in the wee small hours and want to know what time it is. Anyway, instead of getting seduced by the history, heritage and charm of these watches, let's talk about the realities of owning one instead. I've heard it suggested more than once that this is an ideal entry-level beginner's watch because it's tough, reliable and affordable, but I'm not sure that's true at all. Personally, I think a beginner would have a much easier time living with a watch that has the hacking and hand winding features, and there are some affordable quality dive watches that have them. However, for those of you that are determined to own this iconic Seiko cult classic, perhaps I can provide a few tips to give you an easier ride. So let's start with setting the day and date, shall we? Some people seem to have trouble doing this, but it's pretty easy using this method. We're going to be using the quick set date function. To do this, we'll need to be careful because if you get this wrong, you can damage the watch. The watch mechanism starts its date change between 10 PM and 3 AM. And if the hands are within this time range when you use the quick set date function, there is a risk that you might damage the movement. So the first thing to do is to unscrew the crown and pull it out to the second click position. Change the time until the hands are around the 6:30 position. This will ensure that no damage will occur when we use the quick set function. Next, push the crown fully back in and pull it out one click. Set the watch to yesterday's day and date, which is Saturday the 22nd. The day is changed by rotating the top of the crown towards you. And the date is changed by rotating the top of the crown away from you. Okay, there we go. So now pull the crown out to the second click position and then you keep on going past 12 o'clock until the date changes. And there you see it's just flicked over. So now we've just gone past midnight last night and the time now is nearly 4:45, so we'll just put it somewhere near. So that's 5 o'clock this morning. Go through midday. Oh, we're somewhere around there. We won't worry too much about being super accurate there right now. So now we've set the day and date correctly, we need to synchronize the second hand. This would be easy on a watch that has the hacking feature, because the second hand would stop when you pull out the crown to the second click position, like this. However, on the SKX it's a bit trickier. So before we start, I should say I don't recommend doing this when the watch is fully wound, because you could put stress on the mechanism. However, in practical terms, the watch is unlikely to be fully wound when you first get it, and then if you stick to setting the time as a morning routine, the watch will have had a chance to run down overnight. Anyway, to do the next bit, I'm going to need more props. Right, so the first thing to do is to find an accurate time source. I use the GreenwichMeantime.com website, which covers every time zone in the world, but you can use whichever source you consider to be the most accurate. You know, if you happen to have an atomic clock in your pocket, go right ahead and use that. I certainly would. Anyway, the first thing we're going to do, can we see the watch? Yes, is to pull out the crown to the second click position. Rotate the top of the crown very gently towards you, like that. And as you can see, the second hand will stop. Okay, so it's stopped at 5 seconds too. Just wait for the second hand to come around. There we go, release. And then adjust the time, which is 31 minutes past. Okay, that's about right. I know that'll be about right from experience. I'm not going to make you guys wait for it to come right around. Then the last thing to do, obviously, is to screw the crown back in. Just screw it in gently, and you don't want to damage the threads. When you feel it stop turning, just give it a little nip, and that's enough. You don't have to go berserk. Lastly, the way you wind this watch, let me just clear some of this clutter first. Okay, the way you wind this watch is by giving it a gentle shake. If you're going to wear it all the time, you won't need to do this, but if you take it off, the power reserve only lasts about 40 hours. It won't stay running for a full 2 days. I find that when I'm not wearing mine, it needs to be gently shaken for about 1.5 minutes per day. That might sound like a lot of hassle, and it would certainly be easier if you could hand wind it, of course, but it's one of the penalties of owning an old school design classic, and also it gives me the chance to spend a little time with my SKX every morning. Now, there are a few other things that you should know about these watches. The accuracy is highly variable from watch to watch, so buying one is a bit of a lucky dip. Seiko rate them at -20 to +40 seconds per day, which is a full minute of drift. That's a pretty broad range, so if you get a bad one, it can run 40 seconds fast per day. Yikes! Seiko will just shrug and tell you it's within specification. In reality, most of them are a lot better than that, and the timekeeping can be improved by taking it to a watchmaker and having it regulated, but this is an extra cost. I've been very lucky with mine. It gains 7 seconds per day when I'm not wearing it, and 2 to 3 seconds per day when I am, which I find quite acceptable for an affordable mechanical watch. Other things that people complain about are that they've bought SKXs with misaligned chapter rings and the bezel doesn't line up properly. As you can see, I've been very lucky here also. It all lines up beautifully there, if you just look. Anyway, whatever. If you're worried about quality control issues, there may be a case to be made for going to an authorised dealer and looking at the watch before you buy it. It might cost a little bit more, but you know, well, at least you'll get to ensure the build quality. Right, so that just about wraps it up for the Seiko SKX007. I do hope you've enjoyed this review and that some of you have found it useful. If so, click the thumbs up icon and give it a like. It would also be nice to see a few comments too. Tell me if you're thinking about buying an SKX or if you've recently bought one. So until next time then, all the best to you and yours, and goodbye for now.